In this video, we'll talk about substitution bias. Substitution refers to our tendency to answer one question in place of another. We have intuitive feelings and opinions about almost everything that comes our way. We like or dislike this new colleague before we know much about him or her. We feel this candidate for political office is more trustworthy than that candidate without being able to articulate why. To answer a target question, we substitute it for a heuristic question, which is easier to answer. For example, the target question is, what's your opinion on a complicated matter? You probably substitute it for a heuristic question, what's the opinion of political or religious authorities whom I trust? We sometimes don't have time or expertise to be data-driven or data-informed to make every decision. Instead, we rely on trusted authorities. Sometimes these authorities are worthy of our trust, but other times they're not. The target question is, what do you think about the proposed policy in our department? You probably substituted for a heuristic question, how does this proposed policy influence me? Does it create more work for me? Will I get paid for more work? The substitution bias is intertwined with availability bias we discussed in an earlier video. Availability bias refers to our tendency to outweigh the information that is more frequently accessible in our memory rather than the content of information. For example, the target question is, do we have the right data to make a wise decision? You probably substituted for a heuristic question, what data and information can I remember? The target question is, how happy are you with your life? You probably substituted for a heuristic question, how happy am I right now? The substitution bias is also intertwined with affect bias we discussed in another video. Affect bias describes our tendency to rely on our emotions, feelings, and mood to make decisions. For example, the target question is the new employee adjusting well? You probably substituted for a heuristic question, how do I feel about the new employee right now? The target question is, how should that administrator be punished for his or her unethical behavior? You probably substituted for a heuristic question, how much anger do I feel about it? We sometimes use our feelings as a substitution to the target question when we make moral decisions. People's moral opinions on sensitive subjects, such as sexual orientation, are sometimes driven by emotions such as disgust rather than by a reasoned argument. Stereotypes are a source of the substitution bias. In a face-to-face conversation with strangers, it is more computationally complex to judge their personality than judge the color of their skin. So if a stranger has a stereotype of the personality of whites, blacks, Latin Americans, and Asians, that racial attribute might substitute for the more complex attribute of personality. The unconscious intuitive nature of attribute substitution explains how we can be influenced by the stereotypes while thinking that we have an honest, unbiased evaluation of the other's personality. Politicians take advantage of the substitution bias frequently in interviews, debates, town hall meetings, when asked about their policy proposals. Instead of answering the policy questions directly, some politicians tell us a story that is usually emotionally arousing. If we're not careful, we are easily carried away by emotions, empathy, anger, fear, or excitement. But wait, what was the original question posed to the politicians? The substitution technique works for the politicians because answering a substitution question not only eats up time but also creates an emotionally resonant experience with the audiences. In job interviews, applicants use this substitution technique as well. When asked a difficult question, some applicants answer a related but different question by using similar wording in the original question. If we, as interviewers, do not listen carefully, we often don't even realize the substitution has taken place. Substitution can also be a deflection when we don't feel comfortable with answering the true answer, or an avoidance when people don't know the answer. Leaders can make the substitution bias work in your favor. Before introducing a new or controversial initiative, you can first take your team's perspective, imagining what substitutions the team members would have. You then prime the followers with positive emotions prior to the discussion of the initiative. In this video, we talk about the substitution bias. It is our tendency to substitute a target question for a heuristic question which is easier to answer. Now it is time for you to provide an example of the substitution bias and reflect on how it influences the decisions made by you or the people around you.